For the session, we have with us Mr. Rajesh Desai, CEO and Director, Lyra Network. Now introducing our panelists, we have with us Mr. Naveen Kukreja, CEO and co-founder, PaisaBazaar.com, Mr. Mandar Aghase, founder and vice chairman, Sarvatra Technologies, Mr. Ravish Naresh, co-founder and CEO, Khatabook, and Mr. Suhail Sameer, group president, BharatPe. I would request all the delegates to kindly keep posting their questions in the chat box, and our speakers will address a selected few at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Desai.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much. And thank you all for participation. And I'm glad to have a wonderful and diverse, panel in this discussion. I look forward for a very spirited discussion and maybe a very intellectually stimulating discussion as we move forward. It always gives a lot of pride when you have people in the panel from different sectors and different sections and segments, because it brings in a lot of variety in the entire panel discussion which we are having. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being there in this discussion. So to set the context, if I can set the context right, emerging technologies creating disruption in fintech is what we're going to talk all about. Now, fintech is not just a term anymore. Um, it is not just a terminology which describes technology integration with fintech, with finance. It used to be back office once upon a time, but no more. It is no more support function. It's in fact defining and redefining an absolutely new industry altogether. In fact, according to Niti Aayog, I think fintech is an absolute upward trajectory, and it's growing at a phenomenal pace, and probably touching about $1 trillion, by the year 2023. That itself is a phenomenal growth for the fintech industry as such. Technology, as everybody knows, has leapfrogged from branch banking to maybe centralized banking to e-banking and now mobile money, which in fact has helped to create a lot of strength even in the remotest of areas across the nation. And the role of technology has just grown beyond being a mere cog in the entire strategic framework of companies to actually driving, redefining and shaping business models and revenue streams for all countries, all companies. So fintech innovation has been at the forefront of tech disruptions in recent years. There has been disruptive shift if you look at with conventional cash flow and all other financial services over the last few years, as fintech has entered this particular space, this digital payment space. And the good news is that many of these new technologies, though threatening, are also creating an opportunity for all of us in this industry. People are coming forward, adapting themselves to these changes, and looking forward to simplify transactions. As they start using various apps like the Beam, the UPI, and multiple channels within this digital payment space. So, in short, this panel discusses technologies, or rather emerging technologies, which probably create disruption or maybe innovation in the fintech space. So let me start this. Probably I can have some opening thoughts on this from all the speakers. Maybe I can start with Mandar. Your opening thought on this?
Thank you, Rajesh, and thank you, Jaime, for arranging this amazing panel, which will really put light on the things which are happening on fintech. Sarvatra Technologies probably is one of the few companies which started in rural fintech and came into urban fintech. So over last few years, we have seen some amazing enabled payment system to UPI. So we give, say, Aadhaar enabled platform to a smallest of a bank in rural India, to a UPI platform to the largest bank in India, ICICI Bank, and we drive Google Pay and all the latest platforms. So I think fintech, and with a platform like NPCI coming out with new products, is really going to change not only India, but the experiments in India are going to resonate across the world. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Mandar. Suhail, your thoughts on this?
No, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on the panel. Seems like a very exciting topic to discuss. I think fintech has come of age, and I think COVID, which we've all sort of gone through and treaded through, has been, at least for this industry, a game shifter, right? So digital payment adoption, we all know how it is sort of evolved over the COVID period, and that sort of helped companies like BharatPay, which are at the forefront of UPI, especially on the merchant side, really emerge much stronger, right? So, and I think a lot of the shifts during COVID may be temporary and may go back, but some of the shifts which we've seen on people behavior, especially around payments, comfort with using new methods to stay, and I think we're all set for a very exciting next few years.
Great. Naveen, your thoughts?
Hi, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Technology as an enabler to any industry, especially fintech and various parts of fintech, has been kind of getting developed over the last 4 or 5 years since the time Aadhaar started taking shape about 5 or maybe even slightly more than 5 years ago. And how technology is solving or at least creating the ability to solve the various problems is something that's very interesting. And if I take a step back on what problems does fintech face, uh, historically in India, especially if you look at the lending or investment or insurance, there were three large problems that were kind of holding the country back from a penetration perspective from the across all products. It was comfort with digital technologies from a consumer perspective, or readiness. It was access or distribution, and it's underwriting and figuring out using technology and data to figure out how to underwrite, especially in lending to more difficult segments like SMEs, like subprime, which continue to be fairly underdeveloped in the country. We've seen that the comfort part has been addressed largely, I think, initially by the e-commerce segment, where consumers started getting really comfortable with using technology and digital to do transactions. And over the last 2 3 years, I would say, even the payments within fintech has helped consumers get very comfortable with using technology, digital mediums to do payment transactions. The other two, access and access as well as underwriting, is where the technology has helped create enablers, but unfortunately, it's not at the scale as the potential of the technology allows. And we saw that in the COVID period, where almost all the lending at least came to standstill in the country as the lockdown happened, kind of exposing the lack of implementation or usage of technology. Having said that, I think the times that we are in, I tell my team and I tell the partners that we work with that it's possibly the most exciting time, and we are fortunate to be in fintech in these times, because the way technology is coming up, as well as the COVID shock, which was kind of a shock treatment, will make sure that the next 2 to 3 years are very exciting and will allow technology hopefully to kind of really get utilized in a meaningful manner.
Great. So exciting times ahead, Naveen. Thank you so much. Ravish, what about your opening thoughts?
Firstly, thanks Rajesh for having me here. So actually, I think there's some context to all of this, as in this, as Naveen said, this has been going on for some time. So I think the biggest disruption that happened, from my views, has been is that the huge telecom disruption that has brought in so many new users. Like in fact, majority of the Bharat, especially outside the metro cities, online for the first time. In fact, we see from our vantage point that majority of our users are in fact using Khata Book. Is the first piece of business software in their life ever. In fact, for majority of our users, they've just come online in the last year or two, have just started using basic apps like WhatsApp, YouTube, and just become very new to the internet. So I think that. COVID, for when it happened already, fortunately we had all these digital pipes in place for us to enable new digital software to be built for to enable more of our users. Just to give you an anecdote, we have users, for example, sitting in Port Blair and Andaman Nicobar. No offline company has been able to reach there. But fortunately, because that user is online, thanks to the telecom disruption, we've been able to build for it. And in fact, like this is true for all companies. Like I'm sure Sohail can also verify that huge disruption has happened in the payment space over the last couple of months. There's been such a huge behavior change towards digitization, towards being comfortable in using, say, QR payments, or adopting digital software to make your workflows more efficient. So yeah.
Great, sounds interesting, Ravish. Thank you all for your opening thoughts. So, without any further ado, let me start by posing my first question to Naveen. Naveen, which technologies do you think will cause major disruption in this financial industry?
Okay, Rajesh, it's a slightly different, difficult question. My perspective is that I think more than the piece of technology or the kind of technology, it will be the maximum disruption, and what causes that will be driven by how it's used and how it's implemented across the entire ecosystem. There are some very, very exciting technologies slash capabilities already available for the country, not getting utilized to their full potential. I'll take a couple of examples, and I'll go back to the problems that India needs to solve to increase the penetration. And again, just to give context, the about the problem, for example, India has about 40 million credit card users. That's 3% of the population. If you compare that to a market like US or UK, there is almost 100% penetration amongst adult population for a product like credit cards. You look at retail lending penetration as a percentage of GDP, India operates at about 12% versus a market like UK, which operates at about 75%. So what has caused the under penetration? There are three things. Like I said, lack of awareness or education of financial products, uh, lack of ability to reach and distribution cost or difficulty. And Ravish was mentioning that they have customers in Port Blair, whereas it'll be very difficult. Can you imagine a physical lender NBFC to have a customer in Port Blair? I hope somebody is there, but I don't know if anybody is there. Um, and the third one is, of course, what kind of data can you use to underwrite? So the technologies which allow easing any of these, and I'll take a couple of examples. If you look at access or distribution, uh, Aadhaar getting created. Now there is a central KYC system infrastructure that's getting created. What they are allowing is they are allowing the entire process, whether it's KYC, whether it's income validation, to move from physical to digital. Of course, in lending, the challenge remains that even if you solve the acquisition problem, you need to be able to reach out to the customer at the time of collection. So as soon as we solve the going out or being able to reach out to the customers for acquisition as well as collection, then the demand and supply, consumers and players kind of start to meet at a much lower cost in a far more frictionless manner. In my mind, the pieces that can allow that to happen is usage of when usage of eKYC infrastructure, which is a beautiful infrastructure, got created, unfortunately not getting used right now in lending at least. Um, uh, Infrastructures like CKYC, which have got created, infrastructure like UPI and payments, which have got created but can be used beautifully for payments. So there's been discussion on using UPI rails to do eNACH basis UPI instead of net banking, and that simplifies the process. Uh, in terms of if I have to name a couple of technologies, I think while it might sound a little cliched, but AI and ML, what they will start to do is they will allow newer companies, smaller companies, more nimble companies to start using machine learning to segment consumers in a far more kind of segmented fashion and identify consumers which are good to lend to basis a lot more data than was being used earlier. Imagine, because of what's happened in UPI and payments, there is so much transaction data that's available for each consumer as well as each merchant. I mean, Ravish and Sohail both are sitting on rich data from merchants' perspective, and that if you create access to that data and allow ANML to sit on top of that and allow underwriting on basis transaction data, I think that will be the next biggest disruptor besides the technologies that already are available.
Correct. So me too. I also can see AI, ML, Bitcoin, blockchain, and then Internet of Things, Internet of Payments. I can see a lot of technologies, of course, emerging coming up, and I'm sure these are going to disrupt or rather innovate. Let's see what's in store for it. Thank you so much, Naveen. My second question will be to Mandar. Mandar, the financial requirements of customers, be it rural or be it city, they vary. They vary from city to city and rural to rural. What factors should be taken into consideration so that customers can easily start adopting these technologies?
So I think one of the most important aspects we have seen when we give a UPI like a platform to an rural bank which is completely new to digital, when we give to ICICI, what happens is the digital education has to come in from the government or network that goes on, but also it has a lot guy taking the initiative to tell the customer how to use the products. Otherwise, many products get rolled out but hardly get used. And what I've seen is that with all internet and all the information coming in, the adoption of new products is faster than the old products. Like it took us 10 years to go to 600 banks across 27 states to give a simple product like debit card. But for UPI, we managed to bring 50 banks on rural banks on UPI platform in less than 2 months. For Bharat bill payment, we could do it in less than 1 month. So the adoption definitely is happening fast because of whole media and so many things talked about. But I think final adoption to the customer, a lot has to be done by the banks. I think banks have to play a very critical role, or companies like those who are on the panel have to do a lot of critical role in the last mile adoption of products. Without that, just platforms will be there but hardly used.
Right, Mandar. So basically, digital payments have emerged as an important tool for advancing financial inclusion. There's no doubt about that, And the payment systems are constantly changing, evolving as people look at new ways to make transactions more seamless
I,
and more
I
safe.
would I would like to add just one thing. Example,
Yeah, Mandar.
Aadhaar enabled payments. Were there for a long time, but hardly used beyond a certain level by those who really get some money deposited of Jandhan or something. Only they use that Aadhaar enabled. But in this COVID, when all the urban working population workers went back to rural, and suddenly they found themselves without a debit card and no money access, they suddenly found all the BCs in the rural area went and activated their Aadhaar payment, and we saw transactions grow from 1 lakh a day to 40 lakhs a day.
True.
And purely because of COVID, such game changers will, and they have not come down, even though the people have come back to urban city, they're not come back. So I think there will be triggers which will help drive the digital thing. But if it's done very formally, systems like Aadhaar enabled payment system could be used in a very big way.
Right. Very important point, Mandar. Thank you so much. So let me shift the discussion a bit to local markets, and let me pose this question to Ravish. Ravish, Indian fintechs are customizing technology to adapt to the local markets rather than waiting for the market to adapt to technology. Fintech's appetite for disruption is ever growing, So what are some of these areas or those areas where you can see this happening?
Sure. So I think clearly through on Khatabook platform, what we've seen it happening is that we have users in more than 90% of Indian districts. And what we solved for is basically accessibility. For example, we have our app in more than 13 languages, and that basically enabled us to get to as deeper reaches of the country. And have a sort of a secular reach across all of the hinterland. So I think solving for accessibility is was one of the main things that we did to enable us to get to where we are at. That said, I think fintech, as Sohail was mentioning, fintech should not just be looked from from a perspective of digital payments. What we clearly see is even after demonetization, cash still remains the king. Majority of the country, cash in circulation is still greater than what it was before demonetization. So India, despite these new behaviors, despite these shifts, India will, especially the rural economy, will continue to be cash intensive. Cash will continue to have a majority share for a long time. So unless we are solving for models, where we are able to lend to on the basis of the existing economy, I mean, it'll take us a really long time to shift all of this cash to completely digital. Say 90% digital payments will take 20-30 years to achieve. So in the meantime, we need to come up with models. Where we are sort of collaborating with NBFCs and have data models that enable to lend to the existing segment. I mean, it's going to take a lot of time to have a completely digital shift to I would say 100% digital payments.
Right, great. Thanks here. Sohail, what's your take on, like, is it more than disruption? Can this be considered as an innovation? What's your take on this? Sohail?
It's an interesting question. To be honest, I'm not probably educated enough to know the distinction, but I think the way I see it, disruption is just innovation taken to scale and which can sort of have meaningful difference in people's lives, right? So if I were to take that yardstick,
I think there's some network issue
Yeah.
at
Sohail
Sohail's
is.
end. Why don't we continue with the rest of the panelists while he connects back?
So Sohail is cut off now, or is he?
No, I guess he's there, but we cannot hear
Okay.
him.
So anybody else who would like to reply on this, or have their thoughts on this? More than disruption, can this be considered as an innovation? It was quite an interesting question, because in fact, if I look at it, it's a very thin line between innovation and disruption. Anybody's thoughts on this? On this yardstick?
I think we have Sohail back.
Yeah, Sohail back. Sohail, can you hear us? We lost you for
I
some time.
was changing Wi-Fi. We can hear you. I can hear you all fine.
Okay, so maybe you can restart again on your answer.
Sorry, I was saying UPI to me is a clear sort of disruption, right? It changes the way digital payments are done. It's a first of its kind in the world, right? So how we do lending on the back of alternate data, the type of merchants I lend to, they don't have an income tax record, hardly file GST returns. They have no history of repaying, right? So if you would open their CIBIL, they will either have no score or I will have a very thin file, right? So being able to sort of unlock that segment of the population to me is like a option. So what Khata is doing, if they are able to sort of lend on the back of that, is a real disruption. Today, I will still classify it as innovation, but the Dukaan product by Khata Book, right? So that's a disruption. That's taking merchants who are conventionally offline to be able to take their products to market, right? So I think it will always be a mix of both. As innovations are able to sort of scale and being used meaningfully to change lives of people, they sort of start becoming, I would say, disruptive. And as merchants are able to sort of lend on the back of that, is a real disruption. That's taking merchants who are conventionally offline to be able to take their products to market, right? So I think it will always be a mix of both. As innovations are able to sort of scale and being used meaningfully to change lives of people, they sort of start becoming disruption, in my view. Having said that, the real disruption to, I think, what Ravish was alluding to will happen when we are able to sort of replace NBFCs and banks, right, in people's life, and that still, to me, is a long way to go. I think all of us individually are taking steps to go in that direction. I think whether it's another 5 years or 15 years or 30 years, I think only time will tell. But I think what I am able to see through from my vantage point is that all of us are individually moving towards that direction, and sooner or bound to happen.
Right, point taken, Sohail. I mean, I'm also waiting for that day when your dream comes true. So let's hope that it doesn't take 10, 15 years, but probably happens before that. Let's look at that positively. Ravish, if I look at barriers, what factors do you think will become barriers for fintech?
So I think it's probably as Naveen was mentioning, one of the points was distribution. I think accessibility and reach of all these products, for basically credit or lending. Hinterland accessibility is going to be the primary challenge. I mean, we are trying to solve that on the digital layer, but I think a lot needs to be done on enabling, on the financial bit of it. So I think one of the things that I had mentioned before that we're doing to solve accessibility is basically like, we have our product in more than 13 languages. So we try to be as relevant and as local as possible for the regional merchant. So I think, the biggest challenge in my view is always going to be, distribution and accessibility.
Okay, so distribution and accessibility, as per you, is the biggest challenge. But as they say, let's not limit the challenges, but challenge our limits. To look at it forward in a positive way. Uh, Naveen, if I can ask you, do you think financial services and fintechs, in their rush to be out in the front of new technologies, need to be careful about the longevity of these solutions? And if they will deliver these innovations on time they pursue? Do you think they need to be careful there?
Sure, sure. If you allow, Rajesh, I just wanted to take a shot at adding to what Ravish mentioned on the
Sure,
barriers and potential
sure,
barriers. And
sure.
besides the point Ravish mentioned, I think the two, three clear barriers that fear and get concerned about, and they're not going to be technology related. I mean, while there are capital access barriers, etc., but I won't worry about that. I think the markets will sort itself out over a period of time. The couple of barriers that I worry about is that the financial awareness and the fear of financial products still continues to be very, very high amongst the masses. People are almost scared. A normal consumer is almost scared to deal into financial products. It's also driven by the industry where, not enough, while there's been work that's gone in, but not enough has gone in terms of awareness and education about financial products. And of course, if there has been misadventures or bad products sold in the past, that doesn't build the trust. So I think that can be one big barrier to enhancement. And I hope that the industry and the regulator and the government work together. It's a difficult problem. The second problem is, of course, that if as an industry we behave responsibly and kind of, while the regulator is there to govern us, but we also somehow self-govern, and even if there are accidents, which will always happen when there is a evolution happening, those accidents are smaller. I'll take a couple of examples, right? Uh, there's a lot of noise going on around what happened in small ticket lending, especially by some of the Chinese players over the last 1 year, causing severe penalties amongst some consumers, anguish, a couple of suicides. Those are exactly the kind of accidents which can push back the industry by 2-3 years, where regulator basically takes a call that you guys as an industry are not responsible enough, so let me come in and put very, very large barriers And what that does is it basically makes it difficult for newer, smaller players to innovate. So that could be one big barrier, and I hope not too many of those accidents happen. Some of them will happen because it's a very very nascent industry. And the third barrier, which I think potentially can hurt the consumers, is the overzealousness of a very, very small population group on matters like data protection. Again, I'll share an example. Uh, Aadhaar is one of the most beautiful infrastructure and the rails that got created about 5 years ago. It started getting used in financial products for solving KYC problems about 4 years ago, including in lending. And then a very, very small group who was worried about data protection, data privacy, etc., made sure by going to Supreme Court and the courts, etc., that actually that infrastructure is no longer available for the last 2 3 years. As a consumer, and we interact with lakhs of consumers every day as a platform. As a consumer, if the consumer understands that my data is being used to help me get a better offer, I have not come across any consumer who is hesitant to share the data. Not a single consumer, except for these very, very small 0.01% of the minority in the country. Unfortunately, that 0.01% minority can cause things like that happened with Aadhaar. So that remains my third big worry, that their noise quotient is far higher than their need quotient. So these, I think, are the three big barriers in my mind. I've taken time, so I can answer the question that you originally asked, or we can continue the discussion.
Right. You can respond to the next question.
If you could just repeat, sorry, I got the question.
Sure. So, do you think that financial service firms and fintechs, in their rush to be out in the front of new technologies, they need to be careful with the longevity of the solutions, and if they will deliver these innovations they pursue?
Absolutely, it's a super important and super relevant point, that as these segments and the products, especially in underdeveloped segments, and I call, for example, the entire SME lending is underdeveloped, underpenetrated by a huge margin. The entire subprime lending does not exist in India. It is a very, very developed model in developed countries. So the people who need the loan the most actually don't get it in India, or they find it very difficult to get, which is why this whole money lenders, etc., kind of exist and flourish. It's super important that as that area develops, and we've seen examples of fintechs doing small ticket personal loans over the last 2 to 3 years. uh, Responsible lending, responsible behavior, and you use the right word, longevity, right? Building models that sustain periods exactly like what happened in COVID is important to make sure that the industry moves forward. Uh, you know, People kind of getting overzealous and either doing irresponsible lending, or uh, doing lending at pricing which is kind of super normal and not in consumers' interest, can hurt the industry. And in lending, because it's a fairly highly regulated industry, uh, the problem with any single player not being responsible is that not only do they hurt themselves, they risk hurting the entire industry or the segment. So most what I've seen is that most of the players are fairly responsible. They are careful. Of course, there will be mistakes that'll be made, and I hope the regulator kind of is. I mean, regulator is a very smart regulator. I think they've seen what happens across developed markets also. I hope they will stay cognizant of the fact that small accidents will happen, small speed breakers will come, because it's an industry and a segment getting developed. And as long as those are not major, I hope they kind of continue to push the industry forward. And if that happens, I think the market and the excitement and the potential that the India market holds, that will ensure that there is enough capital, enough technology, enough intelligence that's going into these segments to really build out these industries over the next 5 years.
Great. That's a great point you made, Naveen. Now I would love to hear from Sohail. Is Sohail there or he's offline? I don't.
Uh,
Sohail is there. So I would love to hear from Sohail how you respond to my next question. Sohail, attempts to create new viable models, for the digital age will flounder unless people and organizations are willing to disrupt themselves. Do you think organizations are ready to take this challenge? Are you willing to take or disrupt your business model for this?
No, so I think whether you are able to disrupt or not, obviously is an individual call, but it also depends also on the stage of the business, right? So I would say someone like me, Bharat Pay, which was predominantly started as a payments company, went into lending, and we are sort of still rethinking everyday basis, evaluating what is our eventual business, right? So a company like us with a lot to gain and with very is obviously ready to disrupt itself. I think the real question will be that disruption in the industry will happen when large number of people and large players are willing to sort of play a different game than what they've been playing for 20, 30 years, right? So I would sort of flip the question and say, like, banks which have been very conventional in their approach and basically a mixture of let me lend to safe guys who I know will give my money back without doing any disruption in underwriting, and resort to low cost of capital on the back of CASA and RBI sort of capital. Will they sort of relook at this and say we have to make financial inclusion a reality, right? So I think Naveen was talking about people who really need loans find it most difficult to get loans, right? So it is only Bharat Pays or Tata Books or someone else's responsibility to lend to them, but also the full banking system and the NBFC system, which has been created in the first place to cater to that, right? So I think to simply answer your question, I think companies like us, newer age companies, which are still sort of figuring out their business model, are very happy to sort of disrupt their own business for the sake of sort of something potentially much, much bigger, right? So all of us alone can't sort of move the needle unless the industry leaders and the market leaders are also willing to sort of bring new innovation and bring in changes which can hamper their conventional businesses if not done in the right way. I think unless that happens and unless these both things coexist, we will not really shift the needle in a big way, at least quickly, right? So I think I'm very happy that a lot of the newer age companies, some of the newer age banks I talk to are sort of rethinking this whole game and saying the real objective of the banking system and the financial inclusion system was to really serve the underserved, right? And we've sort of, for a lack of a better word, not being able to do full justice to it, at least today.
Right. So coexistence becomes very important in this scenario, as you rightly mentioned. Mandar, which specific sectors or applications do you believe fintech firms offer that have the greatest potential to have material influence or true disruptive industry impact? Mandar, your thoughts on this?
Yes. So I think it is these two products like UPI and lending. These are the two most important innovations, disruptions happening, which will affect customers at large. So what basically looks like a innovation for a large bank like ICICI becomes a disruption for my bank in on Andaman Nicobar Island. So the largest bank on Andaman Nicobar Island uses platform. So earlier they had only one ATM. Now they have ATM on all islands, and those 50,000 who have now my debit card can travel to the mainland and use that. That has become a disruption, which was just an innovation. So many times I'm seeing that basically between these two fields, I think digital lending is something which is creating a huge uh, disruption and innovation in both urban and rural. And in among my customers also, which are mainly the large banks to small finance banks to cooperative banks to credit societies, I think it is going to be again the payments, enabling of payments, UPI based payments, and lending. And of course, the biggest thing would be NACH, e-NACH when it comes in. And if there is something else to replace Aadhaar as some form of digital KYC, all these things would come and become a very important aspects in the years ahead.
Okay, great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It does. It does. Thank you so much, Manda. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So I think we just have 10 minutes left. So as we come towards the end of our time together, I would like to throw one common question to all of us, or all of you all. Let me start with maybe Ravish. Or this common question probably we think of it: is the current uncertain situation a boon in disguise, or is it a hurdle or a blockage in the way of emerging technologies? Ravish would like to
Sure.
respond to that first.
So I definitely think it's a boon, of course, for innovation. We have seen a lot of new behaviors being accelerated, especially in terms of digital payments and software adoption. So in that regard, there's been a lot of innovation and a lot of shift that's happened. So definitely innovation. That said, a lot of our users are still sort of, their sales are still lagging in terms of what it was before the pandemic. So overall economy is, I would say, has definitely taken a hit. But I think there's I was reading some estimate, there was nearly an $800 billion loss on the overall GDP due to the pandemic in India. So while there has been innovation, definitely, especially the lower segment is still, reeling under the effects of the pandemic. So I think this innovation will truly start showing, its effect once all these businesses are back on track, and I think that should happen over the next, I would say, 1 or 2 years.
Great. Thank you, Ravish. Sohail, what about you?
No, so I think uncertainty and chaos and business sort of impact is always the breeding ground for innovation and disruption, right? So I think to me, this has been a great time for a lot of us in terms of bringing new products to market, testing out multiple things. Market has been like slow, so it also gives us some breathing space to set out to build. And I would say net, I think for all the effort put in during this time, I think as a collective industry and therefore hopefully the economy and the country will sort of benefit in the next few years to come, right? So I would definitely classify it as a sort of a game shift time, at least in the financial services industry, and therefore, of course, a big boom.
Okay, so we have a majority for a boon in disguise at this point of time. Let's look at Naveen's point of view on this.
Okay. So very similar. I think I'm confident and that when 3 years down the line, we would all in fintech especially we would all look at 2020 as the best teacher who was very tough in the year, but turned out to be the best teacher. So I think especially for lending, it's given us rude shock and very painful in terms of short to even medium term. But my sense is 3 years down the line, we would look at it as possibly the best period because it forced innovation, it forced thinking differently, which the lending industry needed for some time. So in that sense, boon from a long term.
Wow, yeah. So boon in disguise seems to be a clear winner as of now. Mandar, what's your take on this?
I feel the same as all that. This was a tough teacher, this whole COVID lockdown, but it really helped most of us emerge that how to use innovation for actually living your life. So it's no longer that you have to just innovate for innovation basis, but it became a reality to survive. So most of our banks found that they could not reach the bank headquarters, or they could not, hardly one or two people were there in the branch. But because they had outsourced the entire digital platform, it was working 24 by 7. And then they could use a Aadhaar enabled payment system to go to the customer's home and offer them services. So all these things were always talked about, but it never happened in real life. This is the first time when there was no choice for everyone, or including my entire staff, to work from home and really experience what it is of running a company, not really being in office and asking that I need that face to face for that comfort and for innovation. Everything was thrown out of the window. You had to take what is available, survive, and while you wash your utensils, on the other side you have to do some digital conferences. So, these things played a very important role. We could all pick up most of our hobbies, and it was a good time and a
Correct.
bad time, but I think it will really go down as a very path breaking year for the entire country.
True, true. So indeed, a bully in is completely in disguise, and I'm sure this uncertainty, this different scenario which has cropped up in the last 10, 11 months, it has made our thinking different. It has made the way we look at life differently, the way we approach things professionally, personally, completely different. So yes, let's look at it very positively. Let's look at it as a boon in disguise, and let's hope that all's well that ends well. So, gentlemen, this brings to an end the 50 minute or the 40-minute session which we had. I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their valuable thoughts, their insights, and their views on this important topic of discussion. Thank you, thank you once again. As I look forward in us coming together and building a stronger and a bit bigger digital India using these emerging technologies. Thank you so much. Aparna, you can take from here.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for being with us today. I would also like to thank our design partner, Wise Ape, media partner, Financial Express, PR partner, We Communicate, and knowledge partner, PwC. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for sparing your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.